Have you ever wondered how a simple accident could turn a beautiful young woman into one of the most extraordinary saints in history? Saint Lidwina of Schiedam never traveled the world, never preached in public, and never walked again after the age of 15. But from her bed of agony, she moved heaven and earth. This is the true story of a soul who transformed pain into prayer and suffering into sanctity. Chapter 1. The Early Years of Lidwina. In the quiet town of Schiedam, nestled among the foggy canals of medieval Holland, a child was born who would one day become a mirror of Christ's suffering love. Her name was Lidwina. The year was 1380. She came into the world in poverty. Her father, Willem, was a laborer. Her mother, Petronia, raised 9 children with a strength rooted in faith. There were no signs, no voices from heaven, just a little girl born into obscurity. But within her, God was already at work. From her earliest years, Lidwina showed signs of extraordinary grace. She was not like other children. While others laughed and played in the streets, she often accompanied her mother to Mass. There, she would kneel in stillness, eyes fixed on the tabernacle, lips moving in silent prayer. Something in her soul already recognized the hidden presence of God. At age 7, she began practicing small mortifications, giving up food, sleep, or comfort in secret, offering it all to Jesus. Her confessor, deeply moved, said she had the soul of a saint. He once admitted that he struggled to find anything to absolve during her confessions, so pure was her heart. As she grew, Lidwina blossomed into a beautiful young girl. Her golden hair, gentle voice, and modest smile drew admiration from many, but she paid no attention to compliments. When someone once praised her appearance, she simply replied, "It is virtue that adorns the soul before God, not beauty that fades with time." Her parents, though proud of her devotion, were practical people. They hoped for a good marriage for their daughter, perhaps even one that might help lift their family out of poverty. Suitors began to appear, some young, some wealthy, all interested in the radiant girl who rarely left the church, but Lidwina's heart was already taken. At just 12 years old, she confided in her mother her deepest desire, to belong entirely to Christ, not in theory, not someday, completely, immediately. Her parents were taken aback. A life of virginity and consecration was rare, especially for someone so young and without formal religious formation. But they saw something in their daughter they couldn't explain, a peace, a strength, a quiet determination that could only come from grace. In those days, there were no miracles around her, no visions, no prophecies, no signs that she would become anything more than a devout girl in a devout town. But heaven saw differently, because just a few years later, a single moment, a slip on frozen ice would change everything, and the world would come to know a girl who never walked again, but who ran, in spirit, faster and farther than anyone could imagine. Chapter 2. The Fall that Opened Heaven. The winter of 1395 settled heavily over the town of Schiedam. The canals froze solid, transforming the streets into ribbons of ice. Children danced and skated with carefree laughter, while the breath of frost painted windows and turned the cobblestones brittle beneath their feet. Lidwina, now 15, had not planned to join them. Her heart still belonged to quiet corners of prayer and chapel silence. But on that particular day, drawn by the kindness of her friends and the spirit of festivity, she allowed herself one moment of youthful joy. She stepped out onto the frozen canal, hesitant, uncertain, exposed. What followed was sudden. A slip from a girl nearby, a frantic reach for balance, and Lidwina was pulled down with force. The impact was sharp, her ribs striking against the ice. She cried out, and the laughter of the morning gave way to confusion and concern. Her companions brought her home, thinking the injury was minor, perhaps bruises, or a fracture that time would heal. They expected her to recover quickly, but days turned into weeks, and instead of improving, her condition worsened. Pain spread through her body without clear cause, and her strength faded. One by one, her limbs failed her, as if an unseen force was taking hold. Soon, she could no longer walk or even sit. The joyful girl who once knelt at Mass was now confined to a bed she would never leave. Doctors came and went, bringing with them remedies, tinctures, and guesses. None could explain what they were witnessing. Some whispered of internal injuries, others suggested a mysterious disease. But no treatment brought relief. The slightest touch on her skin caused sharp agony. Even the weight of a bedsheet became unbearable. As her physical pain grew, so did the emotional burden. Still a teenager, Lidwina lost her freedom, her health, and her future. Days blurred into nights, and time became an endless ache. The dreams she once held quietly faded in the shadows of her room. Yet in that silence, something began to awaken. What seemed like meaningless suffering slowly took new meaning. She no longer asked only why she suffered, but whether it could serve something greater, whether her pain could become an offering. This realization did not come suddenly. It rose slowly through tears, prayer, and struggle, but it marked a turning point. Though her body was broken, her soul was beginning to rise. The fall had taken away her health, but it had opened a doorway to heaven, and beyond it, a mission was waiting. Chapter 3. A body broken, a spirit rising. Lidwina's body had become a prison, one of pain, stillness, and silence. Day by day, her condition worsened. What had begun as a fractured rib turned into a cascade of physical collapse. Her limbs weakened, then stopped responding altogether. Her muscles withered. Her skin, pressed constantly against the bedding, broke open into deep sores. Her face, once so lovely, was now pale and hollow, but far more painful than the outward changes were the invisible torments, spasms, nausea, fever, and an overwhelming sensitivity that made even a light breeze feel like fire on her skin. She was no longer the girl who walked through the church aisle or knelt in prayer beside her mother. She could no longer walk at all. Even lifting her head required help. Yet beneath the devastation of her body, something unexpected was beginning to stir. Lidwina's suffering had stripped her of everything except her soul, and in that hidden place, the light of grace began to grow. She did not embrace suffering immediately. At first, she recoiled, as anyone would. There were tears, sleepless nights, silent questions that never seemed to find answers. She mourned the life she had lost, the simple joys of walking, laughing, gathering with others. She grieved the future she had once imagined, but slowly, something shifted. The silence of her room became a kind of sanctuary. The pain, though excruciating, became familiar. And in the stillness, she began to listen not just with her ears, but with her heart. Her prayers changed. She no longer pleaded for healing. Instead, she began to offer what she could no longer change. Her suffering became a gift. Each throb of pain, each hour of immobility was offered to God for the conversion of sinners, for the souls in purgatory, for those who had no one to pray for them. Her bed became an altar. Her wounds became offerings. Her life, though confined to a single room, became vast in its spiritual reach. People began to visit. Some came out of pity, others out of curiosity, but many left changed. They had expected to find a broken girl drowning in despair. Instead, they found a soul on fire. There was a radiance in her eyes, a peace that could not be explained. She never pretended the pain was gone, but she bore it with dignity, with patience, and most surprising of all, with joy. Not the joy of laughter, but the deeper joy that comes from total surrender. Her confessor, those closest to her, and even hardened skeptics began to realize something extraordinary was happening here. Lidwina's body was wasting away, but her soul was being transfigured. In her weakness, she had found strength, and in her stillness, she was beginning to rise. Chapter 4. Visions in the Night. As the years passed, and Lidwina's body declined further, her spirit seemed to expand beyond the walls of her room. Though she could no longer rise from her bed, something extraordinary began to unfold in the quiet hours, especially at night, when the world outside was asleep and pain reached its peak. It was during those darkest moments that light began to break through. At first, it came in whispers of consolation, fleeting images, feelings of divine nearness. But over time, these became vivid and unmistakable. Lidwina began to experience what the church calls ecstasies, moments when her soul seemed to be lifted beyond the physical realm, beyond time and suffering, into visions of the divine. She never sought these graces. They came unannounced, interrupting her agony with flashes of eternity. In one vision, she was led by her guardian angel through the realms of purgatory. There, she saw the souls of the forgotten men and women long dead, known to no one, whose suffering continued in silence. But they recognized her. They reached out not with hands, but with longing hearts, grateful for her prayers, strengthened by her offerings. That night, Lidwina resolved never to waste a moment of suffering. Even her sleepless hours would now serve a purpose. In another vision, she was shown a glimpse of heaven, of light so pure it could not be described, of choirs singing not with voices but with love, of saints radiant with joy. Each soul she saw had a place prepared, shaped by the love they had offered on earth. And yet, all were united in perfect harmony. This vision was not just comfort, it was instruction. It taught her that no pain, no sacrifice, no hidden act of love was ever lost. Word of these visions began to spread. Some believed, others doubted. Physicians called it fever-induced hallucination. Theologians, wary of deception, questioned her closely. But Lidwina never argued. She neither defended nor explained. If what she saw was from God, she trusted He would make it known in His time. And if not, she was content to be forgotten. Her humility only deepened the mystery. Witnesses began to notice that after each ecstasy, a profound peace filled her room. The air itself seemed changed. Her pale face, usually distorted by pain, appeared luminous, almost childlike. Her breath slowed, her expression softened. For a few moments, it seemed suffering had vanished. And yet, these graces did not lessen her physical torment. In fact, it often grew worse. But now, the pain was wrapped in meaning. It had become a veil through which the presence of God was glimpsed. And the more that veil was torn, the clearer the vision became. In the silence of night, Lidwina was no longer alone. She was with heaven. Chapter 5. Fed by the bread of angels. By the 15th year of her illness, Lidwina's body had reached its breaking point. Her strength, already worn thin by years of suffering, began to fail completely. And she could no longer sit up. Her muscles had wasted away. Her skin was torn from pressure wounds, and now her body refused even the most basic nourishment. Any attempt to eat even a morsel of bread or a sip of water would cause violent nausea and uncontrollable vomiting. The simplest gesture of survival became agony. Her family feared that starvation would soon claim her life. Physicians were helpless. Some believed she would slip into unconsciousness and fade away. But what followed defied logic. She did not weaken. She did not fade. Instead, something quietly miraculous occurred. Though Lidwina could no longer receive food in the natural sense, she began to live entirely on the Holy Eucharist. Her confessor, recognizing the deep spiritual hunger within her, petitioned the bishop for permission to bring her communion more frequently. It was a rare concession in an era when even the devout received only monthly. But the bishop, sensing the uniqueness of her path, allowed it. From that moment on, the Blessed Sacrament became her only nourishment. Those who witnessed these communions described an awe-inspiring transformation. When the priest entered her room with the host, the atmosphere changed. Her pain-worn face softened, her breathing slowed. Her eyes, dulled by suffering, filled with light. She received the Eucharist with a reverence that silenced everyone present. And after communion, she would fall into profound silence, sometimes for hours. No food, no water, no medicine, and yet she lived. Not only lived, she endured. Not only endured, she radiated. Doctors, baffled by her survival, began secretly observing her. They suspected deception. Was someone feeding her when no one was watching? Was it imagination, exaggeration, or fraud? But after prolonged observation, they were forced to admit there was no natural explanation. Lidwina was being sustained by something the world could not measure. She often spoke of the moments after communion as her deepest union with Christ. The host, small and fragile, became everything to her. In it, she found strength, peace, and the courage to offer her suffering again each day. What mattered was not the absence of food, but the presence of God. The bread of life became her true nourishment, and the altar the center of her existence. Her poor sickbed turned into a meeting place between heaven and earth. While others feared she was starving, Lidwina knew she was being fed by God. Chapter 6. The Sick Woman Who Reads Souls. The longer Lidwina remained confined to her bed, the more people came to believe that she was no ordinary sufferer. Word had spread not just of her endurance, but of something deeper. Those who visited her often left not only comforted, but changed. Her small, dimly lit room, once a place of solitude and sorrow, became something else entirely. People from every walk of life began to arrive, some on foot, others by cart drawn, not by spectacle, but by an invisible pull. They came not seeking miracles, but meaning. It was not the exterior that impressed them. By then, Lidwina's body had been ravaged by nearly 2 decades of illness. Her limbs were twisted, her skin covered in painful sores, her voice weakened. But there was something in her eyes, something quiet, penetrating, unshakably present. She listened not just with patience, but with a supernatural attentiveness. And then she spoke. She did not offer vague comfort or rehearsed platitudes. What she said often startled visitors with its accuracy. Without ever having met them before, she seemed to name the precise wound hidden beneath their questions. She exposed fears they had never confessed aloud. She guided them, not with authority, but with grace that pierced straight to the heart. It was not something she had learned, it was something she had been given. This was the fruit of suffering offered in love. Years of pain had taken everything: comfort, independence, ambition, and left a soul that saw with clarity. This clarity came not from books, but from God, and those who met her felt it at once. A troubled merchant chose to make restitution. A young woman burdened by scruples found peace after a few words. Even priests, humbled by her purity, sought her guidance in vocation and temptation. Even the Bishop of Utrecht sent troubled clergy to her, not to test her sanctity, but to be restored by it. She never claimed to be a prophet. In fact, she was the first to doubt herself. When praised, she lowered her gaze and whispered that everything good came from God alone. But even in her humility, her influence grew. As her illness worsened, and she could no longer speak at length, Lidwina began dictating short, direct letters filled with wisdom. These became lifelines for those she could not see, copied and treasured by many. For a world seeking direction, she became a quiet compass. Though she never left her bed, she reached farther than any preacher and touched countless hearts. From her stillness, she seemed to read souls and in doing so, helped guide them back to God. Chapter 7. When Heaven Goes Silent. For many years, Lidwina lived in deep communion with God. Though her body was torn by suffering, her soul had found peace. The presence of Christ in the Eucharist, the comfort of visions, and the clarity she offered to others gave her a sense of purpose that carried her through the long hours of pain. But even for the saints, there comes a time when light disappears. Around the 20th year of her illness, a new trial began, one unlike any she had known before, not of the body, but of the soul. It came quietly, without warning. The visions ceased. The consolations vanished. Her moments of prayer, once rich with divine nearness, became dry, empty, silent. The joy that had sustained her spirit now seemed distant, unreachable. She found herself alone in a new way, not only isolated from the world, but seemingly separated from God himself. This was not the absence of faith, it was the stripping of all feeling. She still believed, but she could no longer feel the one she believed in. Prayer became an act of will, not of joy. The Eucharist, once her living flame, now tasted like silence. This was the dark night of the soul, a trial known to mystics, feared by many, endured by few, a time when God hides his face, not in rejection, but in purification. It is in these moments that love is tested not in emotion, but in fidelity. Lidwina continued to offer her sufferings, but now with tears. Her soul wrestled with questions that had no answers. Had she been deceived? Was it all her imagination? Had God abandoned her after all these years of surrender? She faced temptation not of the flesh, but of despair. The thought that her suffering was meaningless, that her prayers were unheard, that she was forgotten. But she did not give in. Even when heaven was silent, she remained faithful. Even when her soul felt cold, she continued to pray. Even when every part of her cried out for relief, she whispered, "Surrender." This hidden battle, more painful than any physical wound, would last for years, and no one could see it. To those outside, she was the same serene woman, but inside, she was walking through a storm without a compass. And yet, it was in that storm that her love reached its most heroic form, not in ecstasy, but in emptiness. Not in light, but in darkness. Eventually, the silence lifted, not suddenly, but like the slow return of dawn. One Easter morning, as she received the Eucharist, she felt the presence she thought lost stronger than ever, deeper than she had ever known. She understood then, true love is not measured by what we feel, but by what we choose when nothing is left. Lidwina had chosen to trust in the silence, and heaven had not forgotten her. Chapter 8. Miracles no one expected. Lidwina never sought signs or wonders. She did not ask for visions, nor did she desire attention. Her life was hidden, her sufferings silent. But grace has a way of overflowing, even when uninvited. And so, the miracles began. They were not grand miracles meant to impress crowds, but quiet wonders that unfolded in ordinary places. They happened in kitchens, on doorsteps, beside sick beds, and always led back to the fragile girl in a small house in Schiedam. It began with bread. During a harsh winter, her family's supplies were nearly gone, yet Lidwina insisted on sharing with the poor. Reluctantly, her caregivers obeyed. The flour jar, almost empty, was poured again and again, yet it never ran dry. Day after day it fed many families. No one could explain it, and no one dared question it. Later, it was water. A woman from a nearby village brought her sick child to visit Lidwina. Before leaving, she asked for something, anything that might help. Lidwina gave her a piece of cloth that had touched her bed and blessed a small vial of water with the sign of the cross. Days later, the child recovered completely. Doctors could find no explanation. These stories began to spread. Pilgrims came, not in throngs, but in quiet desperation. Some were ill. Others brought items, handkerchiefs, rosaries, scraps of linen to be touched to her bed or blessed with a prayer. Not all were healed, but many were. Some simply by entering the room, others after receiving a whispered word or gentle touch, and others still were healed, not in body, but in heart. Hardened souls melted. Lifelong sins were confessed. Enemies forgave one another. Grudges disappeared. Even skeptics were not immune. A group of young men once came intending to mock her. They had heard stories and came to see the spectacle for themselves. But before they could speak, Lidwina gently addressed each of them, naming their secret wounds, revealing the restlessness they had tried to hide. They left shaken. 2 returned later in tears, asking for prayer. 1 eventually entered religious life. These were not magic tricks or performances. They were signs of a deeper reality at work. They were not proof of Lidwina's power, but of God's nearness through her surrender. Perhaps the greatest miracle of all, however, was not physical. It was the peace people felt after leaving her room. Not the end of their problems, not freedom from suffering, but the knowledge that suffering, when offered in love, could be holy, and that holiness, when hidden in weakness, could still change the world. Chapter 9. A Life Hidden in Mary's Heart. From childhood, Lidwina had loved the Blessed Virgin Mary. Her mother had taught her to whisper prayers to Our Lady at bedtime, to offer little sacrifices for the heart of the mother. But it wasn't until suffering entered her life that Lidwina began to understand just how close Mary truly was. During the long nights when pain robbed her of rest, Lidwina often meditated on the sorrows of Mary. She would picture the Mother of God standing at the foot of the cross, watching her son bleed, unable to relieve his agony, yet never turning away. There was something in that image that spoke directly to her own experience. She, too, knew what it meant to stand helpless in the presence of suffering. She, too, had to say yes to a pain she did not choose. As the years passed, Lidwina's relationship with Mary deepened, not just as intercessor, but as companion. She didn't simply think about Mary. She lived in her presence. Her every prayer, her every sigh, felt as though it passed through Mary's hands before reaching the throne of God. And sometimes it seemed Mary came to her. There were nights when Lidwina's caregivers found her face changed soft, almost radiant after long hours of prayer. A gentle fragrance lingered in the room, like spring blossoms. Lidwina never spoke of these moments, offering only a faint smile when asked. Yet her confessor noticed that after Marian feasts, her peace deepened even more. He quietly began to believe what she would never claim, that the Mother of God visited her in solitude, bringing a consolation beyond words. One year, during the vigil of the Annunciation, Lidwina began a new practice. For every bead of the rosary, she added a short meditation, linking each Hail Mary to a concrete moment in Christ's life. Her version of the rosary spread quietly among the townspeople, many of whom found in it a deeper, more personal way to enter into the mysteries of faith. Lidwina's devotion to Mary was not merely devotional but deeply transformative. Through Mary, she learned how to see her suffering with trust. If the sinless mother could stand at Calvary in love, Lidwina believed she too could offer her wounds without fear. Her love for Mary was quiet and complete, like that of a child who knows she is safe in the dark. She lived not by thinking of Mary alone, but by dwelling in her presence. There, Lidwina found the grace to suffer well, never alone, but with the mother near her in silence. Chapter 10. The Beautiful Death. By the time Lidwina reached her 50s, her body had been broken for nearly 4 decades. Every bone ached, her skin was frail, her muscles long wasted away. Breathing itself had become a labor, yet her soul, had never been stronger. Her room had become a place of pilgrimage, her sickbed a silent sanctuary. People still came, some to ask for her prayers, others just to be near her peace. But those closest to her sensed that her journey was approaching its final ascent. 3 months before her death, Lidwina confided quietly to her confessor and family that the end was near, not in fear but in serene expectation. She had always belonged to Christ, and now, at last, she would see him face to face. Far from grieving, she seemed almost radiant. Her final weeks were marked by deep prayer and a supernatural calm. Though the pain intensified, her spirit remained untouched. She spoke very little, conserving her strength, but when she did, her words carried the weight of eternity. She spent time blessing those who cared for her, thanking them, encouraging them, reminding them that nothing done in love is ever forgotten by God. To her mother, who could barely contain her sorrow, she whispered gently that death was not a separation, but a fulfillment. Her final day was the 14th of April, 1433. At dawn, she asked for 2 things: a crucifix to be placed before her, and an image of the Virgin Mary beside her bed. Then, with the help of her confessor, she received the sacraments one last time: confession, communion, and the anointing of the sick. Those gathered around her recalled a striking stillness. The room, often filled with the sounds of labored breathing or whispered prayers, seemed hushed, as if heaven itself had drawn near. With eyes fixed on the crucifix, Lidwina began to pray the words of Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Her voice, though weak, was clear. When she reached the verse, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil," her face lit up not with earthly beauty, but with something luminous, almost unearthly. Those present testified that in that moment a soft fragrance filled the room like flowers blooming in spring. And then, with a breath that was more like a sigh of love, she gave her soul back to God. Her face, so long disfigured by pain, now appeared young again, restored, at peace. It was as if suffering had released its grip and left only grace behind. And so, in the silence of that morning, Lidwina of Schiedam entered eternity, not in agony, but in glory, not in defeat, but in triumph. Chapter 11. Canonization and Legacy. News of Lidwina's passing spread quickly through Schiedam and far beyond. Word traveled not with shouts, but with reverence. People didn't say she had died, they said she had gone home. Her body was left unburied for several days, and what followed astonished even the skeptics. Despite the spring warmth, there was no sign of decay. Her wounds, open for years, emitted no odor. Instead, a gentle fragrance lingered in the room like lilies and roses at the height of bloom. Pilgrims flocked to her side. Some wept in gratitude, others in hope. Many touched her bed or garments, and soon after, stories of healing began to circulate. A blind child recovered sight. A crippled man walked again. A young woman delivered safely after a dangerous labor. All credited Lidwina's intercession. Even more powerful, however, were the invisible miracles, the conversions, reconciliations, and awakenings of faith sparked by her memory. Hardened hearts were softened, families reunited. The poor and forgotten spoke her name with affection and awe. The church took notice. Just 5 years after her death, her grave was opened. Witnesses confirmed the incorrupt state of her body. A sweet fragrance remained. The bishop ordered a formal investigation. Testimonies were collected, miracles documented. Letters, confessions, and personal accounts were preserved with care. Still, the church moved slowly, as she always does when discerning sanctity. Decades passed, generations, but devotion to Lidwina never faded. In 1890, more than 4 centuries after her death, Pope Leo XIII formally approved her veneration. Though not canonized through modern procedures, she was officially inscribed among the saints. Her name entered the liturgical calendar. Her life was held up as a model not just of endurance, but of redemptive suffering. She became the patron saint of the chronically ill, the forgotten, and the bedridden. Her story resonated deeply with those who felt cast aside by the world, those whose pain was invisible to others, but known to God. Hospitals, hospices, and healing ministries took her as their protector. Statues and stained glass bore her image, not glorious and triumphant, but lying in bed, a crucifix in hand, eyes lifted toward heaven, a saint not in motion, but in stillness. Her legacy is not one of great deeds, but something quieter and deeper. She showed that suffering, when offered in love, becomes a source of redemption, that hidden lives can still shine, and holiness needs not noise, only surrender. Today, pilgrims still come to Schiedam, kneeling where she once lay. They do not seek miracles, but a voice that still speaks through a life completely given, a life that proves even from a bed of pain, a saint can rise. Chapter 12. Prayer to Saint Lidwina. In the silent hours of suffering, when burdens weigh heavily on the heart, we turn to Saint Lidwina of Schiedam, who transformed pain into grace. Formed by quiet endurance, she invites us to offer our trials to God. O gentle saint, whose sick bed became an altar, intercede for us. You showed that true strength is not in escaping suffering, but in embracing it with trust. Teach us to unite our daily trials with the passion of Christ, so that every tear and every ache may become grace. We pray that you, who have borne an unimaginable burden with unwavering faith, may guide us through our own dark nights. Bring comfort to those who are isolated by illness, and solace to those whose hope has dimmed. Teach us the art of quiet perseverance and the power of humility, so that in our own suffering we might discover an unexpected light. In moments when the world feels cold and distant, remind us that we are never truly alone. Just as you opened your heart to the love of the Divine Mother and the presence of her Son, may we be filled with a deep sense of spiritual intimacy. Let our hearts be still and receptive to the gentle whispers of God, even when the silence seems overwhelming. Grant us the courage to trust in His plan, to endure our own trials with the knowledge that every burden carries the seed of redemption. Help us to offer every pain, every loss, and every longing not as a curse, but as a precious gift to the Lord. Saint Lidwina, patroness of those confined by suffering, we ask that you intercede on our behalf. May your example inspire us to transform our own hardships into acts of love, and may the light of your humble witness shine into every dark corner of our lives. In your quiet strength we find hope, in your gentle silence, a call to surrender. Guide us, dear Saint, so that we too may learn to see the beauty hidden within our struggles and, in time, rise in spirit, renewed by the grace of our Savior. Amen.